Amazon's podcasting business has transformed over the past 6 months, according to the New York Times back in August 2025. The company reportedly eliminated more than 100 jobs from its podcast studio, Wondery. At the time, Amazon insisted it was not shutting Wondery down, and that appears to be technically true. It still uses the Wondery brand.
And Theo Baker is graduating from Stanford this spring with something most seniors don't have, a book deal, a George Polk Award that he received for his investigative reporting as a student journalist, and a front row account of one of the most romanticized institutions in the world, his forthcoming How to Rule the World. An Education in Power at Stanford University was excerpted Friday in The Atlantic, and based on that alone, and I can't wait to see the rest. The only question worth asking is the same one Baker himself might be too close to answer, which is, can a book like this actually change anything? Or does the spotlight, as it always seems to, and send more students racing to the place?
Two of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's biggest political rivals say they are joining forces in a bid to oust his coalition government in the upcoming election expected later this year. The former Prime Minister's right-wing Naftali Bennett and centrist Yair Lapid issued statements on Sunday announcing the merger of their parties, Bennett 2026 and There Is a Future.
A highway bomb attack in southwestern Colombia has killed 19 people and injured at least 38, the latest spate of violence ahead of next month's presidential election. Buses and vans were left mangled in the blast Saturday on the Pan American Highway in the restive southwestern Cauca department. Iran's top diplomat, Abbas Araghchi, has left Islamabad for Moscow, the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, as mediators hoped to keep the prospect of more Tehran-Washington talks alive. Araghchi sandwiched a visit to Amman's Muscat in between trips to the Pakistani capital and left on Sunday to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow the following day. But there was no indication that direct Iranian talks with the United States would resume.
After 15 years as Apple's CEO, Tim Cook will be stepping down from the role in September. On the latest episode of TechCrunch's Equity podcast, Kirsten Korosek, Sean O'Kane, and I discussed Apple's big announcement. We reflected on how Apple has changed since Cook took over from Steve Jobs in 2011 and what challenges incoming CEO John Ternus will be facing.
And US President Donald Trump and his officials were the likely targets of a suspected gunman who attempted to storm the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Acting US Attorney General Todd Blanche has said the suspect, named by US media as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, was arrested after police said he opened fire near a security checkpoint during the event at a Washington, D.C. hotel on Saturday. And Israel has issued new forced evacuation notices for areas in southern Lebanon, ordering residents of 7 towns that lie beyond its so-called buffer zone to leave, ramping up the conflict with Hezbollah despite a US-brokered ceasefire. An Israeli military spokesperson said in a statement on X on Sunday that the Lebanese armed group was violating the ceasefire and that Israel would act against it, telling residents to head north and west.
US President Donald Trump reiterated on Sunday that talks with Iran would be held remotely and commended Pakistan, which has been playing a mediatory role between Washington and Tehran, saying that Islamabad would stay involved in the process. The US president's remarks came during a phone interview with Fox News, where he said, if Iran want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. If they want, they can talk. But we are not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar said on Sunday that traffic restrictions around Islamabad's Red Zone and Serena Hotel, which was expected to be the venue for the now cancelled US-Iran talks, had been lifted. Traffic restrictions around the Serena Hotel and the Red Zone in Islamabad have been lifted today. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the people of Pakistan, especially the residents of Islamabad and Rawalpindi, for their patience and cooperation.
United States authorities believe a gunman who is accused of trying to storm the White House Correspondents' Association dinner was targeting US President Donald Trump and members of his administration. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said on Sunday that authorities believe the suspect travelled from California to Washington, D.C. by train via Chicago.
And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn, a day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Amman as part of a tri-nation tour. He is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th.
Tehran, Iran, across Iran's capital, life has returned to a kind of normal. Markets, cafes and shops are opening their doors, and some highways are buzzing with traffic once again as a fragile ceasefire with the United States largely holds after weeks of devastating US-Israeli attacks. Police in Thailand say they have arrested an Indonesian man accused of defrauding Americans out of $10 meters in romance scams, and he will be extradited to the United States. The 33-year-old was arrested at a luxury resort on the island of Phuket on Friday, local media and the AFP news agency reported.
Honor has introduced two new gaming laptops in China, the Win H9 Gaming Laptop 2026. Both models feature 16-inch displays, Intel processors, NVIDIA RTX 50 series graphics, fast charging, and Honor's new Dongfeng cooling system. The Win H9 is positioned as the higher-end model, while the Win H7 targets buyers looking for lower pricing with strong gaming performance.
Loyalists of President Mahmoud Abbas won most races in Palestinian municipal elections. Election officials said in a vote that for the first time in nearly 2 decades included a city in the besieged Gaza Strip. The elections had been held at a highly sensitive moment amid complex challenges and exceptional circumstances. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa said as results were announced on Sunday. Newly uncovered fossils in southwestern China are forcing scientists to rethink when Earth first shifted from simple, flat, primitive life forms to complex animals capable of moving, feeding, and shaping ecosystems. We're talking about real animals with all the natural traits to grow, feed, move, and graze.
And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn. A day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Amman as part of a tri-nation tour, he is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28. And Islamabad. Pakistan has notified 6 routes for the transportation of goods to Iran against an incashable bank guarantee amid reports that thousands of containers destined for Iran are awaiting clearance at Pakistani ports. For this to come into force, the Ministry of Commerce has issued a statutory regulatory order, Transit of Goods, through territory of Pakistan Order 2026. And Israel has escalated its attacks on the Gaza Strip in the past week, with at least 4 Palestinians killed across the devastated enclave, including a 40-year-old woman in Khan Yunis in the past 24 hours amid daily violations of the October ceasefire. Medics and local health officials report more than 25 Palestinians have been killed in the past week alone, taking the number of people killed since the ceasefire to more than 800.
Someone's offering an unusual deal for a 13-acre property in Mill Valley, just north of San Francisco. Homeowner and investment banker Storm Duncan has created a LinkedIn page for the home, which He said he'd like to exchange for anthropic equity.
And welcome back to TechCrunch Mobility, your central hub for news and insights on the future of transportation. To get this in your inbox, sign up here for free. Just click TechCrunch Mobility. Tesla earnings came and went, and much of it fell into the we expected this category. Investors seemed surprised by the $1.4 billion in free cash flow, which gave shares a expectations, depending on which batch of analysts you reviewed.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn, a day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Oman as part of a tri-nation tour. He is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28.
United States President Donald Trump has cancelled a planned visit to Pakistan by his envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who had been expected to explore indirect talks which remain deadlocked over issues that include the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. If they want to talk, all they have to do is call. Trump wrote on his social media platform Truth Social on Saturday, signaling that Washington for now would not send negotiators to Pakistan, the country that is mediating between the longtime adversaries. I constantly use dictation apps such as Whisperflow, Willow, or Typeless to reply to messages and emails on both my Mac and my phone. But to do so, I have to use my phone's mic or AirPods to dictate my messages, and they often don't pick up what I am saying. That's why when Notta-owned Speakon pitched me to test a dedicated device for dictation, I was intrigued by its potential. Unfortunately, I had mixed experiences with the product because of its form factor and platform limitations. Turkey has announced that individuals living abroad who have not been Turkish taxpayers for the past 3 years will soon be exempt from taxes on foreign income for 20 years if they relocate to Turkey. Under the new proposal shared by Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, foreign investors relocating assets or operations to the country could benefit from zero tax on overseas income for up to 20 years, alongside other cuts in capital gains and inheritance taxes when implemented.
Gaza City, as fragile ceasefires are in place between the United States and Iran and between Israel and Lebanon, a question is vexing Palestinians in Gaza. Will the de-escalation on other fronts help Israel escalate its military assaults in the enclave or force it to adopt a more cautious path? Since April 8, the US and Iran have maintained a tense ceasefire after weeks of US-Israeli bombing of Iran and Tehran's retaliatory strikes on Israel, as well as infrastructure and US assets in the Middle East. But Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz and a US blockade on Iranian ports loom large over the region, even as mediator Pakistan tries to bring the two rivals back to the negotiating table. Mali has been rattled by coordinated attacks carried out by several unidentified armed groups beginning on Saturday, escalating the political and security crisis in the country, which has been under military rule for most of the past 14 years. On Sunday, a military source told Al Jazeera that Mali's Defence Minister Sadio Kamara had been killed amid coordinated attacks on military sites across the country, including the capital, Bamako. His residence in Kati was attacked on Saturday. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is expected to return to Pakistan following his visit to Oman and ahead of his planned trip to Russia. According to Iran's Foreign Ministry, a portion of his delegation has already returned to Tehran after holding discussions in Islamabad to seek further guidance on post-war diplomatic matters.
University College London, UCL, has announced its Global Undergraduate Scholarship 2026, offering significant financial support to international students seeking undergraduate studies in the United Kingdom. According to official UCL information, the scholarship application deadline is April 27, 2026 at 9 p.m. PKT.